it came back, even if it was for one night only, and that is the AEW versus NXT war for rating supremacy. And if you really want to call it rating supremacy, it was anything but that, because both took hits due to the MLB playoffs and the NBA opening night, whatever competition there was out there. And I got to ask, were you watching Dynamite or were you watching NXT?
Honestly, full disclosure, I was going back and forth until I found something that piqued my interest. And the first thing that really caught my interest was obviously the MJF back and forth with Sir William Regal. So that was obviously very good. And then I think the main thing that I watched was obviously Moxley and Hangman Page. But I can honestly say, other than those two big segments on AEW, I was literally going back and forth.
Was there anything Was there anything that caught your eye with NXT though? Because they really brought the floodgates with former NXT talents and main roster guys, whether it was Judgment Day, you had Kevin Owens on the show, you had Shinsuke Nakamura on the show, you had Chucky on the show. They were really throwing it out there. Shotzi Blackheart announced as the Halloween Havoc host. Almost every segment had some former NXT talent wrestling or working with a current NXT talent, it looked like.
Yeah. I think the thing that caught me by surprise most, or really shocked me the most for NXT, was obviously Shinsuke Nakamura showing up and working a match. Thought that was pretty cool, especially given that he's probably one of the most notable guys to come out of NXT, one of their better champions, and had some really good feuds down there. Kevin Owens show, that was pretty good. A few of those things were decent, piqued my interest a little bit.
Right. Now we're going to go a little bit deeper into what happened on both those shows, but let's talk about AEW Dynamite first. The thing everybody's talking about, the character arc and the story development of one Maxwell Jacob Freeman, yet again giving another stellar promo. And you could say one of three promos this year have been promo of the year, and this is definitely going to be one of them on the conversation. He comes out, interrupts William Regal. He talks about an email that he received from William Regal when he tried out for WWE, and basically said, hey, give me your tapes, give you notes on it. And after the third tape that he gave him, William Regal basically said, thanks, but no thanks. Stop sending me this stuff. MJF took it to heart, said that he almost killed himself over it, but that would prove the naysayers right. That would prove William Regal right. And now at 26 years old, he is a top of the wrestling industry, one of the top guys in the industry, and including, bringing up the 2024 bidding war where William Regal's former employer will try to do whatever they can to bring MJF to WWE. But William Regal also had some nice comebacks himself where he basically said that MJF just cuts corners. You always get help to get where you need to be. You haven't done it for yourself. You haven't earned anything yet. And obviously what happened later on in the show definitely, added to this storyline. I honestly think this was MJF's best promo of the year. Maybe even the best promo he's done in AEW. Maybe you call it recency bias, but I don't know, something about that promo you just connected with like you haven't with other MJF promos.
Well, I think it's one of those things where one, it was a long segment. I mean, it had to be like 15, 20 minutes. I definitely didn't feel like it went long or overstayed its welcome. I felt like I was invested the entire time. Even though it's something that happened on a wrestling show, didn't feel like a wrestling segment, so to speak. Like it didn't really seem like it. It's MJF. He's amazing. He's going to cut a good promo every time, but there were layers to it. There was deep meaning behind it. It wasn't just like your traditional, he goes out, he confronts Moxley, or Moxley confronts another guy and they're going to talk about, and we saw this last week with Hangman, the Hangman Page thing was very similar. There was an emotional attachment, I think. There's starting to tell the story of why MJF is the way he is, why he's become the guy he's become, why maybe he's jaded. I think, 2 weeks ago, he said he hates the person he is when he walks out that curtain because he knows he the person he has to be. He's willing to do these things to make it to the top. And, that's not just him going out there and bragging about how good he is anymore. They're actually taking the time to explain why he's the way he is. And I loved it. I thought this was great. I thought it told a good story. I liked the way that it tied into the end of the show. I thought William Regal did a great job in this as well. And I'm excited to see where this goes from here. In my opinion, I really don't think there's anybody in wrestling that can cut a promo quite like he can, or at least captivate the audience and make them care the way he can.
No, I totally agree. And I think I've seen some people say this has humanized MJF in a way where, you kind of see he's just doing things to get people to hate him, but now he's just like letting it all out. And I've even seen some people say this is kind of a new layer to MJF where all his heroes that he deals with and all the people he respects, he's actually vulnerable to, whether it's CM Punk, whether it's William Regal, and even to a point, even Wheeler Yuta. So I actually like where this is going. And obviously what we saw on the end of AEW Dynamite just added to this storyline. And I mean, you had some really good things, but you also some very unfortunate things. And it was the AEW World Championship match, Jon Moxley versus Hangman Adam Page, unfortunately gets cut short because Adam Hangman Page takes a lariat from Moxley, took a flip and landed wrong on his head and did not get up after that. Had to be stretchered out. The match is called off. Moxley declared the winner. We did find out, though, today from Dave Meltzer, along others, and even Hangman Page has addressed people on Twitter. He is doing much better now, but he has suffered a concussion during the AEW Championship match. First off, let's talk about the injury itself. That could have gone a lot worse. And I know some people were saying it looked like a work and an odd way to finish the match. But then when you see it in slow motion, it was no doubt something went wrong on that spot.
Yeah, it's just one of those things, man. I think, many people are critical of AEW, the stuff that you see in the ring, outside of the ring, and how sometimes you can criticize it and say, it's not safe, they're not trained correctly. And I'm not saying I feel that way. I'm just saying that there certainly are people that will criticize AEW for that. But to think of all moves that somebody would get hurt on, and granted, I know it was like kind of the flip or rotation and him landing on his head, but I initially did think it was a work because I just thought to myself, it was a clothesline, and that move itself has just become, just any other transitional move or a move that you see in probably multiple matches, multiple times a night. And it's just weird. Like, it just goes to show you how dangerous this sport can really be and how fragile everything can really be. And as I'm watching it back, like, I'm trying to see if like he's moving his legs, his arms, and I really didn't see any movement at all. So I thought initially it was kind of like maybe a neck injury and something like that. It is a concussion. I'm pretty sure he'll be able to recover from that. But yeah, definitely a scary moment.
No, it definitely was. And watching it back, you could kind of see when he makes impact with the ring, his neck kind of goes in an awkward position.
Yeah.
And that's where it's like, oh, is this a broken neck? It doesn't look good. But the fact that it only comes out as a concussion, which then again, that doesn't necessarily mean he's out of the woods yet, because we have guys like Adam Cole, who we have not seen in a ring since Forbidden Door, and he sustained a concussion. So, I mean, it could be a long road ahead for Adam Hangman Page, or it could be as simple as a week or two. We don't know, because concussions are one of those things where it's a case-by-case basis. Hopefully it's a speedy recovery for him, and he could be back in the ring and entertaining us all, sooner rather than later. But after this match, because, I feel like the way the show ended was the way it was supposed to end. Just the stuff in between the end of the match and when Moxley started, obviously, was kind of them improvising. So Moxley gets on the mic. He pretty much tells everyone it's a dangerous sport. Hopefully Hangman Page is okay. But he calls out MJF and tells him to cash in on that chip. MJF comes out with the chip, with Bryce Remsburg, gives the chip to William Regal, then runs up the ramp, grabs a microphone from the announcer's desk, and he just says, this time I'm going to earn it. I'm not going to do heelish tactics. I'm going to win that AEW World Championship with Jon Moxley at 100%. I'm going to do it at Full Gear. So it's confirmed, Jon Moxley versus MJF, Full Gear. Do you think these two promos tonight from MJF solidified a babyface turn for MJF?
I mean, at face value, and I even texted you that, I do think it looked like a babyface turn, but you don't really know what you're going to get out of MJF. He could be doing all of this, and then suddenly when it comes time for that match, he could certainly cheat to win, and that could have been just like his bait and switch tactics to try and get people behind him, feel sympathy for him, and let their guard down. And maybe he truly doesn't intend to earn it. But right now, it does seem like they're definitely trying to move him towards a face turn.
Now, I know you've been kind of on the train the last few weeks of it's inevitable. MJF has to go babyface. The crowd just loves him too much. But at the same time, this is MJF and he just finds ways to get people to boo him. On the other side, you do have William Regal in this whole equation. And, he has his brass knucks. MJF has the ring. And, Regal calls himself the gentleman villain or something like that. So I'd be interested to see. I feel like Regal is going to cost Moxley that world title and join forces with MJF.
I think that's a scenario that we could likely see as well. I do feel like MJF can turn face without going full, true blue face, not necessarily cut on the hometown fans, just the talent, and he'd be fine.
Kind of like an anti-hero, like Austin was, essentially.
Exactly.
Well, we'll see how it goes, but on the other side of the coin, you have NXT, and the closing segment of NXT was the KO show with the 3 people that are going to be in the NXT Championship match at Halloween Havoc. Braun Breaker, Ilya Dragunov, and JD McDonough. You got Braun Breaker and Ilya Dragunov going back and forth. They eventually start a brawl. McDonough tries to get in. Dragunov stands tall, holding the belt, but Austin Theory's music hits, and he has the Money in the Bank briefcase. And the closing thing that Vic says is, are we seeing Austin Theory teasing Money in the Bank cash in? Do you see Austin Theory cashing in on the NXT Championship? And is this a good move for both Theory and the Money in the Bank briefcase?
I think obviously it can go both ways. This could be very similar to the way Edge kind of teased that he was going to go and challenge for the NXT Championship. What was that, a couple of years ago?
When he won the Rumble at 2020, yes.
Yeah, but first of all, it's not like they're booking him strong by any stretch of the imagination. I think he's lost 15 matches or something like that in a row. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Vince is not there. This seemed to have been Vince's guy. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be Triple H's guy.
Triple H pushed him in NXT. All the stuff that he did with the Way.
He did. But I think there's a couple of things that are kind of working against him here. I don't think there's anything wrong with Theory. In fact, I think a lot of people give him a bad reputation just because maybe it's the trendy thing to do. I don't know. I mean, there's certainly people that I think get pushed stronger than him, whether it's in WWE or AEW or NXT, that he's much better than, and people don't necessarily gripe about that. I think it's kind of a couple of things going on. One, obviously Vince isn't there, and I think that's a part of the equation. I think that you're going to get Cody back soon. I think there's money in the Cody-Seth feud still. I think that Cody's still the guy that probably is going to end up dethroning Roman. And I know technically Theory doesn't need to cash in before that can happen, and all those things can happen harmoniously and everyone will be happy. But this would be an easy way for him to cash in, go to NXT until it makes sense for him to challenge for that title based on whatever Triple H envisions for the future of WWE, Raw and SmackDown, and go from there. Because right now, as much as I think fans enjoy a good cash in, I think fans would much rather see Cody or even Sami Zayn taking the title off Roman. Or even, honestly, I mean, I know Kevin Owens hasn't been on Raw that much recently, but he was getting pushed pretty strong prior to the past couple of weeks. So
yeah, I mean, there's definitely more avenues to take than Austin Theory being the guy to dethrone Roman Reigns. And I agree with every name that you threw out there. But I think this would be interesting, considering we already saw this with the Royal Rumble winner. Charlotte challenged for the NXT Championship at WrestleMania 36 and beat, what was it, Rhea Ripley?
Yeah.
In the NXT Championship match. So it wouldn't be the first time we saw a main roster talent challenge for the NXT Championship. Obviously, Dolph Ziggler recently won the NXT Championship. I honestly do think it happens Saturday.
Yeah.
He cashes in and wins the NXT Championship. Let him stay in NXT for a while. Let him have a program with either Dragunov or Breaker or McDonough or all of them, while, the upper mid card and, top of the card is kind of full right now. And when you talk about the upper part of the card in WWE right now, more specifically Raw, the brand that Theory's on, Seth Rollins is the United States champion right now. And it looks like that picture has gotten quite clear of where they're going with this on this past episode of Raw, where we saw Mustafa Ali call out Seth Rollins in Rollins' celebration for the U.S. title. Later on in the night, Rollins Rollins wrestled Matt Riddle for the United States Championship, beat him, but we also have Elias out in the ring during this whole time. So at least we have, on the short term, maybe Ali versus Rollins, but perhaps we have like a fatal four-way picture for the United States title in Rollins, Ali, Riddle, and Elias. I actually think that could be pretty entertaining, those four together.
Certainly can be. I know a lot of people are, vocal about them potentially pushing Ali, but thought people wanted that. Then people are upset they were potentially doing it. I don't know. I can't figure it out. But at the same time, I think that putting the belt on Seth was a good idea because it seems like we're going to transition into Bobby Lashley and Brock.
Yep, and definitely. And that was the way Raw started out this week. We had Brock Lesnar and Bobby Lashley just brawling all across the ring. And you see Lashley putting Lesnar through the barricade, then through a table. I really enjoyed this brawl, Ralph, and gets me very excited to see Brock Lesnar versus Bobby Lashley. And the fact that there's no title involved with this is just going to be a special attraction match, probably at Crown Jewel, which I still have no problem with either, but definitely stacking that Crown Jewel card already. If you have Lesnar versus Lashley, and then you already have Roman Reigns versus Logan Paul, that I know is going to get a lot of attention in and out of wrestling.
I think, I don't know if enough people acknowledge the fact that Brock Lesnar is, not just a physical presence, but selling. He was great. He was this small brawl, the bumps he took for a big guy, he definitely sold for Lashley. It made for that segment to be that much more effective. So definitely excited about this. I know that there are certain people in prominent positions in WWE, Ronda Rousey, who want to see Logan Paul beat Roman Reigns. I don't think that'd be the wisest of decisions, but I don't know how much pull she actually has at the executive level there.
Right. No, I don't think she has much pull, and we're going to talk about that on our news roundup episode later this week. The fact that this Lesnar-Lashley match is just simply these two just beating up on each other. You don't have MVP involved. You don't have shenanigans involved with how can we book ourselves out of a corner situation. It's just literally two former MMA fighters that left wrestling, did MMA, are now back in wrestling, and you just want to see who's going to beat the other one. We always talk about the story, but sometimes it doesn't necessarily have to be this long, exaggerated, convoluted story. It could simply just be literally that. They're both former MMA fighters that left wrestling, came back, and we want to see who could beat the other. And as long as we get that, I think this match easily sells itself. But speaking of Crown Jewel, we did get a match announced for Crown Jewel, and it is Judgment Day versus the OC and AJ Styles in a 6-man tag match. However, this does pose a little bit of an issue because Crown Jewel is the same day as the New Japan show Battle Autumn, where Karl Anderson is supposed to defend the Never Openweight Championship against Hikuleo. And Karl Anderson actually went to Twitter today, we're recording this Wednesday, saying that he is not going to show up at New Japan Pro Wrestling show because New Japan did not talk to his agent, which happens to be Luke Gallows. So interesting development here. And we know New Japan's rules. If you don't show up for a title defense, you're going to vacate the title. So is this their way of writing Karl Anderson out of New Japan Pro Wrestling and them being full-time with WWE? Or do we, in fact, see the Never Openweight Championship on WWE programming? Something no one ever thought would happen.
I don't think that he's going to carry the title after this. I think he'll probably have to drop it.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is more of a way to write Anderson and Gallows out of New Japan Pro Wrestling. It's an easy way. And, New Japan, even like Jon Moxley, who couldn't even get to a title defense because of a tsunami, they forced him to vacate the U.S. Championship a few years ago. So Karl Anderson going on Twitter and openly saying he's not showing up because they never talked to him about that date, I could kind of see where they're coming from. But then again, if the rumors are true that they're booked till Wrestle Kingdom, this could be a good way to postpone that match until Wrestle Kingdom. But we'll see when New Japan Pro Wrestling makes a statement about it. But we'll close our show tonight with Bray Wyatt, who returned to SmackDown for the first time since making his return at Extreme Rules. And he gives a very emotional promo, kind of similar to what we saw with MJF and AEW, where we kind of saw, quote unquote, the real Bray Wyatt. He talks about how the last year he lost his self-confidence. He lost his career. He lost, friends, including Brody Lee. It was a very emotional promo by Bray Wyatt, but it is cut short by some video package where we see the same mask that Bray Wyatt wore at Extreme Rules and a bunch of, glitchy stuff that we see with a lot of the Bray Wyatt stuff. And then it goes to black. And, all the cryptic stuff that's said in there saying your life, I think something along the lines is your life is over. That very, very odd what was going on there. So Ralph, is this a split personality gimmick, or do you think there's someone else behind the mask?
There's a lot of people throwing ideas out there, whether this whole Bray Wyatt 6 thing is like 6 different personalities. And I think, I said this a couple of weeks ago. I think they could definitely touch on that depending on the type of match. He can always come back as the Fiend or, whatever version of Bray Wyatt he wants to come back as. I guess I would kind of be a little disappointed if it ended up being where this was just Bray Wyatt's split personality, because I think this kind of adds intrigue to the whole thing. Everybody thought the QR codes and everything was leading up to him being the guy that was returning and revealing, and that would maybe one aspect of it. But is there like this copycat or somebody that's following him around or go in on his coattails, so to speak, and ends up being a rival right out of the gate?
Could be. Perhaps. I know some people have thrown the name Bo Dallas around and, happen to be Bray's real life brother. So it'd be interesting to see if that's the case. I wouldn't totally throw that out. The Wyatt 6, I thought was more of a faction. And with all the QR code clues, it looked like Judgment Day was going to be involved. It seems like that's not the case, but still can leave that out there. Is Judgment Day involved with this too? I don't know. To me, I feel like it's more of a split personality where kind of like in the Nutty Professor 2. And I mean, I'm not trying to say this is a comedy thing, but it's the same situation where Sherman Klump couldn't get Buddy Love out of him. So he had to like extract him in a sense. But then when he did that, he lost Sherman Klump. So is Bray Wyatt trying to get rid of the Fiend, but he can't. And now the Fiend is trying to take over kind of thing. So perhaps that's the route they're going, and it is some type of split personality. Because even if you listen closely to the voice that's speaking in the video, it does sound like Bray's cadence, and they just kind of pitch shifted and slowed it down, so you kind of hide the voice. But then again, that could be Bo Dallas. If they're brothers, they have similar cadences, and while Bo's voice is higher, it would definitely sound different when you slow the pitch down. I really don't know, and I'd like to see what the Babble section has to say about this in the comments. But if you like this video, give us the 1, 2, 3. 1, like this video. 2, subscribe. And 3, ring the bell for notifications so you don't miss the next episode of the Squared Circle Zygo Babble.